します。
お願いします。
出ました。
And practice coming up from the ground and actually just from seiza to our knees. So for example, I press down to be pushed up and contrast it. So every one or two come up the normal way where you pull up, and contrast that with releasing down, pressing down, and letting the down push you up. Now, one thing that I'll mention to keep an eye open for to notice, when you come up normally, when you pull up, notice what happens in this area. When you release down to be pushed up, notice what happens in this area. You may notice that when you come up normally, you pull up, this tightens. And maybe even gets pulled in quite a bit. At the very least, there's some contraction. When you release down, or at least when you get used to doing that, you get more comfortable by doing something that's not normal. You're able to relax into this process of pressing down to be pushed up. This is able to release and let go. Stays full and open. When I pull up, it gets constricted. I release down and pushed up, just like a balloon. Like if you tap a balloon, it gets buoyed up. Pressing down, I'm pressed up. I become round and full like a balloon.
So Sensei, can I ask, when you're releasing down, you know, we're on our shins from our knees to our feet. Is there a particular way of you find pressuring into that base of support, or does it remain even as you press down to come up?
Let me know if this doesn't answer your question directly.
Okay.
Pressure increases.
And my question is, does it increase more by your knees or by your feet, or is it even across the whole shin?
Okay, so the idea, the feeling, the intent is that it's even.
Okay.
Platform. You're just releasing down into the ground. So if I was to be, let's say, removed from this position, my position is simply the circle underneath me.
Mm-hmm.
So the whole platform, you release down to that. Now, that doesn't mean you won't feel more pressure. For example, as you come up, you'll feel pressure in your knees because you are having to engage the ligaments and tendons of your knees. Try to minimize that, but you're going to feel that. So I'm sent up. You'll feel some pressure in the knees for sure.
I mean, I just notice a tendency sometimes to almost be able to lift my feet because so much has gone into the knees.
Okay, let me try that myself. Okay, so check into that. I don't think you have a mirror to look at, but visualize yourself. For that to happen for me, I have to kind of tilt forward a lot. So I'm going to maybe exaggerate a bit, but so I'm going to press into the ground, do that process correctly, but I'm going to angle forward. And that my feet are now light.
Mm-hmm.
I don't need to be angling forward that much.
Okay.
Again, the idea is you go straight up. So yeah, I'll do it from this side here. So I press down and it pushes me up. Not propelled forward. That's not quite the trajectory we want. Now, so you will come forward somewhat, but think of going up. And perhaps contrast, because again, there will be pressure, you'll feel that in the knees, but contrast that with pulling up. When I pull up, let me share with what I'm experiencing. Either way, there's going to be some usage of the ligaments and tendons of the knees, for sure. Just mechanically, the body has to do that. When I pull up, not only does it tighten this area, as I mentioned, but that same pressure is here, but there's a contraction there too. So I have an added stress on my knees. The knees are being, ligaments and tendons are being used, and there's a kind of a resisting, going in the opposite direction, like a fighting of that pressure, fighting of that use. So when I come up and I pull up, that same basic pressure is there, but now there's a tightening into that pressure. So that just adds to the stress in the knees. It's like if it takes 5 degrees of energy or work or stress in the knees, 5 out of 10, to come up, when I pull up, there's like 7 or 8. When the bare need is only 5. When I release down, press down to be pushed up, I still feel some pressure in the knees, but it's minimized and it's not aggravated by a pulling back into those tissues. They're allowed to be open. So it's like a minimal use of them. So whatever you can garner from this process, make a mental file of it. This applies to everything that we do. So if you're simply getting, oh, my stomach is less tight when I come up if I release down, or again, there's less effort in coming up, and the ground pushes me up, catalog and file this, absorb this, because this is not just for this is for everything we do. Now from here, we'll continue up. So in internal martial arts, basically down is primary, down is first. We don't do up. So this is me coming up, of course. Up, up. And I feel actually a little bit of a strain here, and you can hear it in my voice. Up. Again, that's normal. So we have to train down. Down is primary, and down creates up. I press down to pop this knee up. I don't come up, I press down. I press down, the earth, stability, the earth pushes me up as I press down. And then for practice, the next time come up with the other knee. So I relax, eventually you'll be able to have more of a sense of this, and the pressing down simply becomes a relaxing down or just a settling. But first we have to do things macro, just like when we learn techniques. Do things bigger, cruder, macro. Eventually it just becomes a movement of intention. So I push down or release down and see if I can relax enough to allow that push back from the floor and push me up. Press down, I don't lift the leg. I press down to have the leg pushed up. I press down, press down, press down, press down, press down. So I am pushed up. Not unlike a tectonic plate, an upheaval from deep, deep in the earth, pushing the mountain up. Obviously, well, maybe not obviously, the mountain isn't popping up, isn't pulled up, isn't coming up of its own forces, it's being pushed up, driven up. We can access that same force if we release down. Again, on a very basic level, this applies to everything we do. So if once I start to relax and allow the ground to give back, and by the way, if it's really starting to hurt your knees, go to live toes. That takes a lot of that initial pressure off. Press down, send me up. Press down to lift the leg. The leg is pushed up. Press down to send me up. Once you're able to one extent or another, access that technology, what that's doing for you, you have to do less. So again, this is a lot of stuff. This is a lot of extra stuff. That's a lot of extra stuff. And in terms of martial context or interaction, that's a lot of extra doing. Now, of course, on a very, very basic level, in terms of self-defense or the martial aspect, any extra doing drains your energy, so you may not have the stamina, endurance to get through the situation. And also, any extra doing creates a handle for them to work with, to resist, gives them more to work with, gives them a handle. If there's any resistance or fighting, their body, their nervous system understands that. So we're doing less and less and less, less is more. Minimizing, less and less. And so we're not our own worst enemy, and that we're using up all our energy and strength. And the other person has less purchase, less understandable workability that they can fight against and negotiate. They don't have an understanding of the terms, they can't negotiate. But beyond, this is way beyond the martial context, are just useful drills and tools so we get better at these principles and these qualities and this technology. And when we're better with these principles and qualities, it affects everything we do. Both physically, doing things, opening doors, driving, but also mentally, emotionally, our interactions with others. Are we overdoing? Are we overreacting? How much can we let the situation work itself out? How much can we allow the other person to work themselves out? Less doing, less overdoing, less reaction, less fighting, less striving. So this is, the martial aspects are good for self-defense, but it's way beyond that. If you're not interested in self-defense, not interested in the martial, that's totally fine. But the martial study makes us better at these principles. It ingrains, we absorb and digest, assimilate these technologies and principles far deeper, further into our tissues, further into our nervous system, further into our psyche, so it becomes more and more normal, natural for us. Any comments or questions about that?
Like, I guess one of the places where, like, just even in the movement from the floor, you know, in coming right up to standing, the stakes get higher because you're moving away from the ground. And the challenge very much to keep that way of using your body going when you really could fall. And I get that in this context, it's not such a big deal, but it's the challenge I find taking it into other techniques, is that as soon as you load any stakes on it, it's hard to trust the technology.
Absolutely. So you nailed it on the head. That's why we have to do something as, I was going to say, quote unquote, simple as standing practice. Because now we don't have to worry about someone grabbing us. We don't have to worry about moving. We don't have to worry too much about falling. So that's the reason why we do things such as standing practice. It's the reason why we do it in Seiza. Can you relax down? Like the other day, we were doing relax down to elongate and open the spine. We're just sitting here still. And it's hard enough. Like, it's challenging enough to get these things. These are at first very, very, very subtle things at first. And at first it may not even be, it's beyond subtle, totally abstract. You might have to just totally use your imagination. That's where you go. That's where faith comes in. That's where fake it till you make it comes in. And then after that, it becomes a subtle feeling, subtle experience. And then after that becomes more and more tangible until it becomes a real thing, a real physical thing that you can work with. So we do standing practice. We do these things here, just sitting. And again, it's challenging, especially in the beginning, very hard, very challenging, just to do it in the simplest of positions and simple movements, standing up, just getting up. That's plenty challenging for a long, long, long time. So absolutely, if we go into just lifting this knee, you'll probably lose most of it or all of it. But eventually, you'll notice you're losing it. You'll notice how much you're coming up. You'll notice especially once you start to have a sense of down and settled, then you'll notice how much you leave that. And you don't get better at doing it for a little while. You just get better at noticing how well you're not doing it. how good you are at being badly doing it. So that's a very frustrating process. The internal martial arts, all internal arts, any art, it's a path of frustration. It takes long-term understanding, long-term perspective to start to garner the accumulative effects. The skills start to develop slowly, they accumulate slowly, but only if you're practicing continuously. So just sitting here and getting that spine open along that we did just the other class, that's a worthy practice and training for a long time. And just coming to here, probably going to lose a lot of it, or most of it, or all of it. But we just continue the process over and over. Maybe spend a bit more time here before you come up. It's all part of the process. Here, you're going to lose 1 degree or another. Here's another simple example of kind of graduated development. At first, so I pressed down to lift this leg. What just happened there is my foot dragged along the ground to help me keep in contact with the ground so I'm not popping up. So I'm not, if I lift my leg and foot off the ground, I'll definitely probably come up a lot. So as I focused and concentrated on just down, settle, to pop that leg up, down, pressing down, pushes that leg up. It's probably just it's not gonna come up very much. It's gonna drag along the floor because I know if anything more than that happens, I'm actually going to be lifting my leg up. So I press down to bring that foot up, and you see it's quite low, it drags on the ground. When I get better at it, the process just continues. I get better at it. I can press down and lift that leg up and not have that upness happen, not have the constriction, the in and the up happen, and I can do whatever I want. Everything's going down. Everything's going down to create up. But at first, I'm going to feebly go through, maybe sliding that foot or sneaking it through. Coming up, down first. So that would be one of the biggest tips, I think, to present, is just in your mind, make down first. Just the direction, just the mental direction. Focus down, just the direction down. Keep reminding yourself of thinking of down first, because that's exactly the opposite of what we do. Up first. So just switch that around. As always in internal arts, it's the opposite of what's normal. Opposite. So to come up, don't do up, do down. Lift my leg. Don't think up. Of course, that's what everybody does. Lift my leg. You think up. Think down. Downward direction. Eventually, there will be a downward vector, and you'll be able to catch a return wave, an upward vector. Maybe before that, you think down and you still do up. It's another stage. At least you're doing down in your mind first. Down, and you're still pulling up. But eventually, especially when you go slow, develop patience, develop the ability to wait for it, to wait. It's a huge thing. Huge tool in helping you get this over time is the ability to wait for it. That's hard because at first you don't know what you're waiting for. But over time, that's really the key. It's a huge key. So some of you here are ready to really focus on that because you have some understanding, some experience, some knowledge, internal understanding of these things, and specifically this. So one of the most important things I could say to you is wait more. As we often say, this is the other way that's often said. Don't move and do the principle. Do the principle and have it move you. The simplest context I could think of right now, extending ki. When we're doing Minuchi or we're doing Tenkan turning, you've heard this many times. Instead of moving and turning it on instead of moving and extending ki. That's better than not extending ki at all. What's far more potent, far more transformative, far better training, what will really change you and will give you stronger, more potent experience is extend ki and have that move you. Now, the step right before that will probably be extend ki and you'll still move on your own. Extend ki, then move. Extend ki and move, but you're probably then moving separately and on your own. But that's leading in the right direction. At least you're extending ki first. Even better, if you wait longer, if you wait a couple seconds longer or a couple minutes longer and keep extending ki, it will move you. If you keep extending ki for 2 minutes, you'll be moved. Eventually it'll take 2 seconds, eventually it'll be instantaneous. So the doorway is that ability to wait for it. Radical patience. So I won't say don't do the principle and move, because you kind of have to do that for a little while or for a certain phase. And the better you are at waiting, it'll show you, it'll teach you. So at first, I think down or press down and I bring myself up. If I can wait more, press down, release down, press down, release down, press down, release down. It's starting to move me. It moved me about maybe an inch, maybe less. But if I'm paying really close attention, I realize that moved me. I didn't do that movement. A little bit of movement there. I didn't do that. I didn't do this. So I press down, press down, press down. It's elongating my spine. I have enough inner awareness, inner sensitivity that I noticed that it wasn't even this big. From here to here, here to here. It was much smaller than that. It just lengthened or opened my spine slightly. And I didn't do that, so to speak. The releasing down, pressing down, it's happening again. Releasing down, pressing down is opening up, lengthening my spine. That's only steps of experience, steps of ability that allows me to do anything, standing up, popping up, running up, jumping up. Try that, whether you want to be live toes or flat. Just press down, press down, press down, press down, and see if you notice anything happening with your spine. Press down, send your intention down, weight underside, weight underside, weight underside, and notice what might happen with your spine. If you notice any opening of the spine, any lengthening, any rising, that's it. But like anything and everything else, everything starts very small and very subtle. But if you felt any rebound motion, any resulting rising, any resulting pushing up at all that you didn't do, that's it. And eventually you can, as I said, bring it into larger movement, any movement, martial movement, any movement, and then becomes a new way, a new technology. It's a very, very totally different way of doing things. And it keeps the body open, aligns you with natural forces. Gravity, the earth giving back. And by the way, we talk about this is so much work and it's so unnormal, takes a lot of training. Ironically, all this training is to connect to natural, because here's a simple good example. How can you actually come up from the ground? Or if you're sitting in a chair, how are you able to come up? The only reason why you're able to come up, other than having strength in your body to lift your body up, but it's not even you lifting yourself up. What really allows you, you're not really lifting yourself up, even if you're pulling up, because you can't lift yourself up. The ground is pushing you up. So it all comes down to how much are we relaxing, releasing, and opening to the natural forces, in this case, natural force, what we call the ground force. How much are you opening to letting it help you, to work with you, work for you? So this is an analogy to everything in life, right? So when we get up, it could just simply be from a chair or reaching for a cup in the cupboard. All this extra stuff and beyond extra stuff, it's divorcing myself from the earth, separating myself from the natural ground force that supports me. Back to just normal standing. If I exaggerate a bit, everybody stands with too much tension, right? All this excess tension, extra stuff. We're ignoring the natural support that's there for us. The ground is always there for us, supporting us all the time. The only reason why we're able to stand is because the ground is giving back. If the ground wasn't giving back, we continue to sink right into the earth, come out the other side. The earth is giving back. But just in simple standing, we're not accepting that, we're not accessing that, because we're stuck up in our own separateness. And our own thoughts, our own emotions are totally separate. We're like a bubble in the ocean that thinks it's separate from the ocean. We're a bubble of air in the ocean that thinks it's separate from the ocean. So it's struggling to escape the ocean. We're this little bump that's going around separate. And we're ignoring and not accessing and joining the natural forces, gravity and ground force. So to stand, we're actually being standed by the earth. We're being standed by the earth. To come up, it's only because the earth is giving back that we're able to come up. It's the ground force. So really, this is all about becoming more natural. It takes a lot of refining of awareness, letting go of so much. Okay, so let's try as best we can. And just as you said, we're going to lose some of it, and maybe sometimes all of it. But just try to notice the process of losing it. That will help long term. Press down to come up. We'll take this right into standing and into movement. Press down to pop the leg up. Press down, wait for it if you can. Press, see what happens, continue pressing, coming to standing, continue pressing, and see if you can have the earth make your standing taller and more open. How do you do that? By releasing down. The more you can relax and release down, the more the earth will press you taller and straighter. As best you can, take that into a gentle arm swing. Notice when you are pulling away from the ground and doing this in your body by yourself and doing it separate from the support that's there for you. So relaxing, releasing down. And all these things that we say mechanically, physically, all these things will start to happen for you normally, naturally. For example, we're often saying, release the abdomen, hang the tailbone or hang the hips. If you're really relaxed, letting the earth give back, that will happen. So all these mechanical things that we're often saying, release the shoulders, relax the shoulders, release the abdomen, hang the hips. Those are little mechanical tips that get you closer and closer and closer to being organically connected within yourself, organically, naturally connected to the forces that be, the earth, the ground force. Once you start to connect into that, they happen in you and through you. All those things that we mechanically, artificially talk about and artificially create happen to you, for you. And then maybe a little bit more of a minutia, which means there's going to be more of a tendency to lose it because now we're doing something, right? So notice when you start doing, that separates you from this natural connection, natural force. Am I leaning so that I'm not connected to that vertical flow of gravity? Am I engaging my shoulder muscles, which separates my upper body from my lower body and certainly separates me more from the ground? Literally the ground support, the ground force can be supporting my arms, supporting the entire skeletal structure. And if I'm doing that and letting the ground do this, my abdomen will release. My hips, tailbone will hang and suspend because I'm not having to hold myself up and hold myself in. I can be natural and let nature support me. Okay, any comments or questions about that? And we'll try to take that into our movements here. Just try to keep this in your mind to one degree or another as we go into techniques, as we go into movement. But that's what makes the difference between external arts and internal arts. External arts, they're not worried about those things. They just, how strong can you be? How fast can you be? How fast can you be? How much hips can you get behind it? Good body mechanics, which is good. So how fast and how hard can you be using contraction, stronger muscles, stronger hip movement? So that's a different, this is a different technology. Okay, so you can do that, but after 10, 20 years of that, there's nowhere to go. You get really good at having good, efficient body mechanics, then what? It's just the surface. So if we move a little bit further into the 7th Q program, let's start with what we did just the other day. We did Kokyu Indo into Sayu Indo in a 2-beat. Now, we did this a little bit last time, so we're still getting used to that movement, no doubt. But watch as I do this without connecting to these principles and things we've been doing. Coming up, rotating, losing my balance because I'm up in my upper body, using my arms, right? It's better to just physically, mechanically, biomechanically do things better. Bend my knees, come from my hips. Everything moves as a unit. Turn my hips. When you're ready to go further with that, once your body knows the movement, how much can you hang out and relax? How much can you let your weight enter the ground? And that equates to how much the ground can give back to you. How much can you release, open, and relax? That's going to be more healthier for your joints, more healthier for your whole physiological system. And that carries off the mats into the rest of your world, being how relaxed and open you can be, as opposed to the opposite. Maybe you're fit, maybe you're strong, maybe you're coordinated, biomechanically sound, but you can still be really tight and screwed up inside, physically, emotionally, mentally. Can you release, open, and join? Open to join. So Indo, 2 beats. So notice, so in context with what we're saying today, just notice when you pull up. Notice when you deviate from things, which really means when you separate. When you separate your body, when you separate from the ground. Okay, now, then the next movement technique is the same thing, but 1 beat. So that 2 beats gives you a little bit more time to release and let go, basically. When we do 1 beat, there's even more tendency to be tight, doing something. 2 beats, you get a chance to kind of let go and relax into the rhythm. So now as we do 1 beat, can you have all that open relaxedness in just 1 beat? You get to that place, that movement, 1 time. Can you be open and relaxed? 1 beat. Physically, watch and take care that you're keeping your hand and hands connected to your center line. So when you turn, do the step and turn, are you keeping your hands in front of your center line? Or are they deviating from your alignment? 1 beat. So you sink into that hip in 1 beat. So we're doing turning on the feet. So there's a little tenkai happening here, right? I'm turning on either the heel or the ball. The heel or the ball to do the step and tenkai into the Sayu Indo. So I step, a little tenkai, right? A little turn. 1. Okay. Yeah, just do a couple more. I'm gonna take a look here. If you feel like you're getting a little bit uptight about it, you can go back to 2 beats. So again, keep the weight free falling through your hips and legs. Notice when you come up. So physically, technically, mechanically, shoulders down, knees bent, tailbone pointing towards the ground. But organically, what that means is you're just hanging out, letting the weight free fall. So senpai, let's see bigger shape with those arms. Relaxed, open shape. That is better. Okay. Now the next one is Tenkan Undo, 180 degrees. So the basic version is we do Manuchi, arm movement with 180 degree Tenkan. So we're just going to add Sayuendo to this movement. And again, we start with 2 beats. 1, 2. 1, 2. 1, 2. So from a different angle, I do 180 degree Tenkan, Manuchi. As my foot lands, I do a little Tenkai. 1, 2. Tenkai, step, Manuchi, step back, Tenkai, into the hip. 1, 2. Tenkai to turn, step, step back, Tenkai, into that hip. Hands come down and through and up, Manuchi. And then come down into Sayuendo. This one is practice in a drill to coordinate turning of your feet, movement of your legs, driving the body across the room and turning and sinking into the ground, into the hip. Can you coordinate the whole body? The feet, legs. That's a combination of turning on your heel and turning on the ball of the foot, one or the other. (180-degree Manuchi into Sayuendo. Nice open body structure. Okay, let's come back to standing. Let the weight enter the ground. Let the ground open you.